grand rising to all you beautiful souls of light and friends. It's such an honor to have you here today for another segment of CLG Viewpoint. I am Cindy Lorraine Grace, and it is an honor and a pleasure. Today is Friday, April 25th, 2025, and under natural law, in the Kingdom of Canada, it is Divina Vita, Divine Light, 25 year 0035. Today we will be covering Quantum Teleportation Will Blow Your Mind. On international news, shooting for the moon, Russia and China join forces in space. Under local news, Indian man sentenced for smuggling non-citizens into U.S. from BC. Langford Independent Living Facility fined $13,600 for multiple violations. Judge orders Air Canada to pay passengers $10 million in damages after class action. Each segment, I start with the sage clearing. For some of you who haven't heard of a sage clearing, it's a process where I clear out all negative energies, leaving each segment with positive energy. And here is my sage stick. To do that, we light this up and clear all the negative energy, sending all the negative energies back to their perfect place. And so it is. Divine love and divine gratitude. Now, on to quantum.
The final frontier. But here on Earth, two researchers, Professor Prem Kumar of Northwestern and Professor David Lucas of the University of Oxford, are going where no one has gone before, pushing the boundaries of engineering and physics with quantum teleportation. In Star Trek, transporters convert matter into energy, beam it across space, and reassemble it, allowing instant travel, daring rescues, and the occasional mishap. Hello, Circuiteers. Of course, we can't actually teleport people just yet, but scientists and engineers have figured out a way to teleport information without relying on emails or Wi-Fi signals. Here's how it works. At the heart of teleportation is entanglement.
An entanglement?
Yes. Not that kind of entanglement. Quantum entanglement is a strange phenomenon where two particles, no matter how far apart, are basically Vulcan mind melded together. Change one and the other changes instantly. It's like having a twin who finishes your sentences, except that twin is on the other side of the universe. Researchers at Northwestern University, led by Professor and Engineer Prem Kumar, just pulled off a major breakthrough. They've teleported quantum information through fiber optic cables. That's right, the same ones carrying your internet, cat videos, and streams of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. With millions of light particles, aka photons, zipping through, but trying to send delicate quantum data through this chaos is like trying to navigate a spaceship in a meteor shower. But don't worry, Northwestern researchers have found a loophole. They've tuned the quantum particles to a special wavelength that avoids interference, and boom, they proved quantum information can survive the digital traffic jam. Surviving the digital traffic jam is one thing, but the process of building a quantum computer is an entirely different story. It's like trying to build a USS Enterprise with nails and a hammer. Technically, it's possible, but it's extremely difficult. One of the biggest roadblocks in quantum computing is scalability, which refers to the ability to increase the number of qubits, which are the basic unit of information in quantum computing systems that enable more complex problems to be solved. Oxford University researchers led by Professor David Lucas have solved this problem, bringing quantum computing closer to large-scale practical use. They've successfully connected two separate quantum processors into a single, fully integrated quantum computer computer by using a photonic network interface and optical fibers. The experiment uses quantum teleportation to execute logical quantum gates across modules, much like a Star Trek transporter, opening the door to a scalable alternative to single-device quantum computers. What the Oxford study does is lays the foundation for future large-scale quantum computing while also advancing efforts to develop quantum internet for more secure communications. Star Trek's iconic transporters were the sci-fi vision of the creator, Gene Roddenberry. And just like Mr. Roddenberry, our engineers and scientists have envisioned a future we're moving towards at warp speed. Fiction. Warp speed is fiction. How about we say moving towards the future very quickly? And if you enjoyed this week's episode of The Circuit, don't forget to like, follow, and
New discoveries, new technology. Exciting. Absolutely exciting. So now on to international news. Shooting for the moon. Russia and China join forces in space. Sputnik News, written by Sovdatna Ekaminenko. April 24, 2025. Russia's Roscosmos and China's National Space Administration signed a government-backed memorandum of understanding to jointly develop the International Lunar Research Station in March 2021, announcing that the first lunar mission was scheduled for 2026. On Space Day, celebrated in China on April 24th, let's explore that China could install a nuclear power plant on the moon to support the International Lunar Research Station, ILRS. It plans to build with Russia, according to a presentation by Pei Seiyu, chief engineer of the Chang'e 8 mission set for 2028. China aims to land astronauts on the moon by 2030. The Change 8 mission to the lunar South Pole will lay the groundwork for constructing a permanent manned base, says the China National Space Administration. Li Hongzhong of the China-Russia Friendship Committee for Peace and Development met with Russian counterpart Boris Titov on April 24 to underscore readiness to boost cooperation between the sides, with Titov echoing the sentiment. Russian space agency Roscosmos also presented plans at the Shanghai conference to explore mineral and water resources on the moon, including potentially using lunar materials as fuel. Between 2033 and 2035, Russia and China plan to deploy a joint nuclear power plant on the moon to power the ILRS, addressing the lack of solar energy during the moon's 14-day nights. Roscosmos chief Yuri Borisov told Sputnik last year. By April 2025, 17 countries and organizations have joined the Russia-Chinese ILRS project. China aims to expand this to 50 partners, focusing on BRICS and global South nations. Personal thoughts. Much advancements in aeronautics. Exciting times for the Kingdom of Canada and around the world. Local news. Indian man sentenced for smuggling non-citizens into U.S. from B.C. CTV News, written by Todd Coyne, published April 24, 2025. An Indian man has been sentenced to 5 months in a United States prison for helping to smuggle 8 Indian nationals into the country by illegally crossing the border between British Columbia and Washington State. A statement from the U.S. District Attorney's Office in Seattle says 27-year-old Raja Rajat was connected to 2 smuggling incidents at the Peace Arch border crossing in late 2023. Authorities say surveillance video caught 5 people jumping a fence near the Boundary Village Apartments in Blaine, Washington, approximately 400 meters east of the Peace Arch crossing, and then running into a white minivan on November 27, 2023. U.S. border officials stopped the van and arrested 5 citizens of India and a 68-year-old California man who was behind the wheel. 3 of the Indian nationals told authorities that Rajat had instructed them on how to cross the border illegally, according to the statement. Authorities say Rajat collected money from the migrants and paid the mini driver to transport them from the border. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Rajat met with 3 more Indian citizens in Peace Arch Park the following month, directing them to cross the border through the park and get into a car waiting on the American side. The car was stopped and searched by U.S. border officials, and the occupants allegedly told investigators they had promised to pay Rajat later for smuggling them into the U.S. Rajat was arrested near the border and charged with conspiracy to bring in and transport aliens for profit. Mr. Rajat was a mid-level manager of this smuggling scheme, directing non-citizens where and how to cross the border, and even fronting some travel costs for them and for co-conspirators. Acting U.S. Attorney Teal Luthi Miller said in a statement announcing his prison sentence Wednesday, "We are committed to working with our law enforcement partners to stop the illegal border crossings that undermine U.S. security." Prosecutors in the case described the smuggling operation as an organized, coordinated, transnational scheme that operated repeatedly over an extended period of time, according to the attorney's office. Mr. Rajat's role in the organization was not one that can be considered minor. Rather, he was essential to its function, the statement said, noting Rajat purchased flights for his Indian clients and instructed them on how and when to enter the U.S. U.S. District Judge Tana Lynn in Seattle sentenced Rajat to 5 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. However, the attorney's office said Rajat, who had been living in California prior to the charge, is likely to be deported following his release from prison. Sushil Kumar, a 36-year-old co-conspirator in the smuggling operation, was sentenced to 6 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release in March. Bobby Joe Green, the minivan driver, was sentenced to 4 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release. A 4th defendant, a 20-year-old Indian woman who is in the United States on a student visa, is scheduled to go to trial for her alleged role in the operation early next year, according to the statement. Personal thoughts. All illegal activities are being enforced under natural law. These activities are crimes against humanity. Langford Independent Living Facility fined $13,600 for multiple violations of provincial tenancy rules. Check News, written by Corey Sadoway and Mary Griffin, April 23, 2025. Nearly a year after several families fought to get damaged deposits back after their loved ones moved out, the independent living facility Cherish at Central Park in Langford is facing thousands of dollars in fines for operating outside BC's Residential Tenancy Act and regulations. I was happy that there was a penalty. I was disappointed that it wasn't higher, said Greg Stewart, whose mother lived at Cherish at Central Park for 3 years until she moved out in 2022. Last year, Stewart told Czech News he believed the facility wrongly withheld his mother's damage deposit when she moved out. Stewart fought to get the money back. It took about 9 months in total after I started the process, said Stewart. It was arbitration, submitting the paperwork, registered letters, application to have an enforcement order heard, application to small claims court for the order. In a decision from March of this year, the BC Residential Tenancy Branch, RTB, found the company Cherish at Central Park withheld security deposits more than once. The RTB's Compliance and Enforcement Unit found Cherish contravened the Residential Tenancy Act or regulations in 4 ways. For contracting outside the Act, failing to return security and/or pet deposits of 9 tenants, failing to comply with 4 decisions to orders from an RTB director deliberately and continuously, and lastly, omitting or altering standard terms required in a tenancy agreement. As a result, the RTB ordered Cherish to pay an administrative penalty of $13,600. If it doesn't comply by May 28th, it faces additional fines of $5,000 a day. To the RTB and to Czech News in an email, Cherish representatives argued the Residential Tenancy Act shouldn't apply to them. They argue Cherish is a health facility and as a result should be exempt from the Act. BC Seniors Advocate Dan Levette says this issue is a repeated point of conflict in independent living and assisted living facilities across BC. Our office received a doubling of complaints over a 2-year period from 2023 to 2024, said Levette. Levette says the issue needs clarification. The conversations are happening right now at the provincial level with independent operators and also independent living tenants, so we can find a model going forward that provides predictability in rents for the tenants, but also predictability for the operators so they can have a sustainable model, said Levette. The RTB's decision in Cherish's matter and arguments over whether or not Cherish and thereby other assisted and independent living facilities fall under the Residential Tenancy Act are now before the BC Supreme Court for judicial review. Now on to the video.
An independent living facility is looking at thousands of dollars in fines from the Residential Tenancy Branch.
I was happy that there was a penalty. I was disappointed that it wasn't higher.
Greg Stewart's mother lived at Cherish at Central Park for 3 years until she moved out in 2022. She died a few months later. Last July, Stewart told Czech News he believed the facility wrongly withheld his mother's damage deposit, so he fought to get his money back.
It took probably about 9 months in total after I started the process, but it was, arbitration hearing and all submitting the paperwork and registered letters and then, application to have an enforcement order heard and then application to small claims court for the order.
Recently, the Residential Tenancy Branch found the company Cherish withheld security deposits more than once. In March, the RTB's Compliance and Enforcement Unit found Cherish contravened the Act or regulations in 4 ways. For contracting outside the Act by creating a rental agreement with terms like rent increases and restricting guests outside the Act, withholding the damage deposit of 9 tenants, deliberately and continuously failing to comply with 4 orders from an RTB director, and omitting or altering standard terms required in a tenancy agreement. As a result, the RTB ordered Cherish to pay an administrative penalty of $13,600. If it doesn't comply by May 28th, it faces additional fines of $5,000 a day. Cherish wasn't available to speak on camera, but to the RTB and to Czech News in an email, they said that the Residential Tenancy Act shouldn't apply to them, arguing that they're a health facility and as a result should be exempt. BC senior advocate says the issue is a repeated point of conflict in independent living and assisted living facilities across BC.
Our office received a doubling of complaints over a 2-year period, from 1 year to the next, from 2023 to 2024.
One that needs clarification.
The conversations are happening right now at the provincial level with independent living operators and also independent living tenants, so that we can find a model going forward that provides predictability in rents for the tenants, but also predictability for the operators, so they can have a sustainable model.
The RTB's decision in this matter and arguments over whether or not cherished and thereby other assisted and independent living facilities fall under the Tenancy Act are now before the BC Supreme Court for a judicial review.
Personal thoughts. As the BC Seniors Advocate, Dan Levette has said that this issue of conflict in independent living and assisted living facilities across BC warrants a full forensic audit for all assisted living facilities. Judge orders Air Canada to pay passengers $10 million in damages after class action. The Canadian Press by Christopher Reynolds posted April 23rd, 2025. The Canadian Press by Christopher Reynolds. The Quebec Court of Appeal is ordering Air Canada to pay passengers more than $10 million in damages in a class action lawsuit that alleged they were charged higher amounts than the ticketed price advertised. In a ruling Tuesday, Justice Judith Harvey wrote that Air Canada showed ignorance and laxity when the airline concluded it was exempt from a provision of the Provincial Consumer Protection Act. The decision overturns a lower court decision that found Air Canada had breached the law, but that no harm resulted, eliminating the need for punitive damages. The 15-year-old case was brought forward by a consumer advocacy group and a Montreal resident who said he was charged $124 more in taxes, fees, and surcharges than the fair price listed during the first step of the ticket buying process on Air Canada's website. In their initial claim, the plaintiffs argued that the airline undermined customers' ability to make informed choices and must reimburse sums that were charged above the advertised price. The appeal court ruling comes amid a debate about whether growing airline fees and fare classes amount so-called junk fees or offer greater choices for travelers. Air Canada did not immediately reply to the request for comment. Now, on to the video. My personal thoughts. The extraordinary amount of fees is absolutely criminal. What do you think about the enormous amount of bank fees that we pay? Many years ago, when I graduated, my first job was working in a bank. And we never, ever had bank fees. Don't you think that these fees should cease as decreed under natural law? Closing, I am Cindy Lorraine Grace of CLG View Point, and I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here today with me. And if you feel compelled to, please share this forum. May you have a day filled with love, light, joy, and smiles. Each moment is truly a blessing, and I am so honored and grateful to be a part of your life through this time, through these moments. Now, onto a video of clearing negative energy. See you on Divina Vita, Divine Life, Day 27, Year 0035, and that is Sunday, April 27th, 2025. Until we meet again, and thank you.
Technique that has the power to transform your life. The technique, called Ho'oponopono, was demonstrated by the true story of Dr. Hugh Len, a therapist who healed an entire ward of dangerous mentally ill criminals by simply repeating 4 statements to himself over and over and over again. The 4 statements are, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you." By repeating these 4 statements to yourself when focusing on any issue, you will clear any negative energy you harbor around it. By clearing your negative energy, the world reflects that inner change through changing the energetic blueprint in the quantum field. What you say to yourself and feel about yourself changes your world.